So many of you know, some of you do not. I changed therapists from a female therapist to a male therapist to kind of do an experiment. I've been really struggling with confidence and self doubt. So in my head, I'm not joking. I thought, who has the audacity? Who has self confidence out the ass that I could really figure out how to have that?
Okay. Well, I'm a male therapist, and I don't think I'm just overflowing with self confidence. So I'm just a little confused by her statement, but I do think there is something beneficial to seeking out a therapist of the opposite gender because you might get something from them, a different point of view or perspective that's not immediately obvious to you, and a therapist who's your same gender. I've had people seek me out specifically because I'm a male therapist and they want the quote unquote male perspective just to see if there's something more beneficial to them where I'm coming from. But I'm not offering the male perspective in therapy. I'm offering the cognitive behavioral therapy perspective or the motivational interviewing perspective or the acceptance and commitment therapy perspective. So I'm not operating from my own gender paradigm in the way I counsel. But are there different ways of engaging clients that male therapists do than female? I think so. But if you look at the data, the gender matching data, male therapists and female therapists get largely the same outcomes regardless of the gender of the client. So it's really more about the therapeutic approach and the competency of that therapist. There's not necessarily a male therapeutic, I don't know, thing. And I'm just curious because I'm hearing a lot of assumptions from this person. Men have audacity, which makes me think like arrogance potentially, and she wants to be more assertive. Now, I do think maybe male therapists, upon the request of the client, can be more confrontational, and that's more of a masculine norm is confrontation and conflict, and that's maybe more uncomfortable for a female therapist. But now I'm slipping into generalizations, as was she. So there's more within group difference than between group difference. So I don't think a male therapist by default is just exuding self-confidence and has audacity that female therapists don't have. So, but let's listen and see what else she has to say.
A man. So, some of you may have seen the video on my Instagram. I went to a new therapist and he said, "What's up? Introduce yourself, whatever." And I said, "I'm having self-confidence issues." And I thought, men have the audacity and I'd like to find it. So I came to you. He said,
I think that would be my reaction too of, okay. um, as I build the relationship, I would want to press a little bit on some of those assumptions that it seems to be that she's making. Maybe she has a very kind of rigid gender paradigm. Men are confident and assertive and comfortable with confrontation and conflict. Females are lacking in confidence, passive, and avoidant of conflict. I know a lot of men who fit that description. But yeah, I guess when you look at group differences, yeah, there are group differences. When you look at the individual, there's less individual differences. So again, I would just say, hey, do you want to be more confident and assertive and have better boundaries? Yes. Okay. That's more descriptive than audacity. It sounds like there's almost a judgment there if you're confident. And so I would want to push a little bit on that and say, I don't think being assertive is audacious or confrontational or aggressive. I see it as being able to articulate what are your needs, what are your wants, your wishes, and your boundaries in a respectful way through good communication skills. That's how I see assertiveness. And if I was working with her, I would say, let's work on your assertiveness.
"Okay." So I've taken some notes. I've now gone 3 times. First one was virtual. Next 2 times were in person. I've taken some notes on my findings as with my new male therapist. So number one, I did call him an arrogant jackass at our second session. He was like, I think I know a lot about you. It was like first of all, we've been in one session, but I'm not very hard to read. He's like, and since, I know that you probably have been overthinking our last session, up until now. So what have you been thinking? What have you come up with? I was like,
Now, the reason why she may be a good fit with a male therapist is because she's engaging with humor and kind of provocative humor where you're ribbing someone. And that's a masculine norm. That's how males typically bond, is through ribbing, like a playful mockery. And that's humor and that's bonding, and that's more typical of males versus females. And so she started that script off, and so he followed. He didn't take offense, and he returned fire. And so that was a good therapeutic match. If she didn't lead with that, I wouldn't necessarily go to it, or I would test the waters to see if the client is comfortable with that. And if they aren't, I would pull back immediately. But I think that's why she's just kind of got maybe that bonding style more in her wheelhouse than others, and so it's a good therapeutic match there.
first of all, that's a crazy thing to say. Second of all, yes, I have. And I said, well, one of them is I wasn't sure if you were an arrogant jackass or if I liked you. And he goes, well, it can be both. And I go, yeah, I think it is. So that was nice.
Okay, so I'm a little biased. I think male therapists are awesome, but I also know many awesome female therapists. So, but yeah, I think what she's describing, you're more likely to encounter with a male therapist. I guess in general, regardless of the gender, I like therapists who don't take themselves that seriously and can poke fun and be self-deprecating and kind of take a hit, get some ribbing from the client, and then give it right back, as long as you're being attentive, because you can cross the line. And so I'm just kind of a jokey person in general. That's how I bond and get comfortable with people. And not every client wants that. So I have to exercise a lot of self-awareness to not step on the toes of my client, because I will do that. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm doing it in good fun. And here they are, being off-put by me. So it's okay to do this. You just have to be attentive. And again, I don't think it's strictly a male therapist thing, but you're more likely, I think, than not to get this from a male therapist.
I did get a new diagnosis. First session. I'm not sure if I'm going to talk about that yet. But I was like, and it did take me until my third session to accept that. Yeah, and he was like, we did, tussle a little bit on why I was fighting him on that. And I said, hey, I don't believe you about this. And he goes, okay, well, I could be wrong. I'm never wrong, but I could be wrong. There's the confidence I'm looking to get.
Okay, I love the collaborative nature of the assessment of the diagnosis. She doesn't state what the diagnosis was, but he offered up his clinical impression, his diagnostic impression, and then she didn't immediately accept it. And so he kind of just rolled with it. That's kind of a motivational interviewing approach. You roll with the client's resistance, and you don't fight against them. And in fact, I take it as, maybe I don't have all the facts, and so the client is resisting my initial interpretation or my impression for a good reason. So let me investigate that and listen and understand, not just say, how dare the client reject my opinion. I say, no, maybe they've got more details, more facts. And so I just roll with it like, okay. Now he also went to the humor again. I'm this arrogant jerk who's never wrong. That's humor, okay? So I don't think that's true hubris. He was just kind of softening the resistance with humor. And again, that's a way to keep things light and relationally connected in the midst of conflict. And again, that's a nice approach, and things I've used that too.
He has referenced, or last session, he referenced F1 drivers to help me with something that I'm struggling with, and it worked. Showed me a little video of an F1 driver, and then I've been watching videos of that F1 driver, and part of my homework is to watch a couple of F1 movies. And that's, it's actually working. And he is very sarcastic, which has been oddly healing. So overall, right now, I'm actually having a great time. And I think he could be, yes, an arrogant jackass, but I like him. And I think it's working for me.
Yeah, so it sounds like maybe the F1 thing is like an analogy or metaphor. I use metaphors. Again, that's not necessarily like a male female therapist type thing, but F1 sounds like it's a little more within the male interest wheelhouse. But she connected with it. So I would probably try to find a metaphor that connects with her and not just something from my tool bag. And then the other piece is she said the therapist used sarcasm and kind of owns being an arrogant jackass. Now, arrogant people tend to not be self-deprecating and open to feedback and pushback from clients. So would I say this therapist is truly arrogant? No, I would say it's more of a playfulness and like poking fun at oneself and kind of maybe taking on this playful persona of arrogance while actually exemplifying humility. And so again, that self-deprecation, humor, and sarcasm is a disarming technique and it's a bonding technique. And so I do think anecdotally male therapists are more likely to do that. But again, I know a lot of female therapists who that's their style and I connect with them really well. And so maybe it's just more personality. But anyway, thanks for watching. I thought this was an interesting video of this female client's foray into the world of working with a male therapist. Again, I'm biased. I think male therapists have a lot of great things to offer that's unique. The field is predominantly female, so about 77% of licensed mental health counselors are female, and about 22% or so are male. So yeah, try male therapist, see how it goes. Let me know your thoughts and opinions.